Ohio is 44,000 square miles. Most people pass through it on the way to somewhere else. They see Columbus, Cleveland, a stretch of flat interstate, and not much else. That is a mistake. Below the surface of the ordinary, the county roads, the church steeples, the towns you'd miss if you blinked. Ohio has been accumulating strangeness for a long time. A suburb outside Cincinnati where two on-duty police officers, on separate nights in 1972, reported a 4-foot bipedal frog climbing into the river. A village on the Ohio River literally named Utopia that cycled through 3 different experiments in paradise and drowned on the 3rd. A road in northern Ohio where teenagers have driven out to hear screaming children for over a century, and the screams have a documented rational explanation, and knowing that somehow makes it worse. And at number 1, a town the federal government forced out, boarded up, abandoned to the forest, and the legends that moved in while the people were still packing. These are 10 towns in Ohio where something feels wrong. Let's go. Number 10, Loveland. The frog prince nobody wanted. Loveland is about 15 miles northeast of Cincinnati. Population roughly 14,000. Good schools, a riverside trail, a farmer's market. In 2023, the city officially adopted a mascot. The mascot is a 4-foot bipedal frog. Specifically, the Loveland Frogman, the creature 2 separate on-duty police officers reported encountering along Riverside Drive in 1972. The first officer, Ray Shockey, described it crouched in the road at 1 in the morning, standing upright when his headlights hit it, then climbing over a guardrail and dropping into the Little Miami River. Weeks later, Officer Mark Matthews filed a report describing the same thing. The first sighting on record was 1955, when a businessman reported 3 frog-like figures near the river, one carrying a device that emitted sparks. Matthews later came forward to say he had actually shot the frogman, transported the body in his patrol car, and shown it to Shockey, who confirmed it matched exactly what he had seen. Neither officer ever explained what happened to the body after that. In April 2026, Ohio House Bill 821 was introduced to make the Loveland Frogman the state's official cryptid. The city holds a festival every leap year. There are murals downtown. Loveland did not resist any of this. It is the best kind of civic problem to have, and they know it. Number 9, Nakamstiff, where God didn't bother showing up. It is an unincorporated community in Ross County, 8 miles southwest of Chillicothe, settled in 1805. How it got its name depends on who you ask. A brawl at the founding. A preacher's advice to a woman whose husband was cheating on her, Nakamstiff, or simply what locals called their moonshine. In the mid-1950s, the community was given the option to rename itself Shady Glen. They kept Nakamstiff. A man named Donald Ray Pollock was born there, worked 32 years at a paper mill, and then enrolled in a graduate writing program at Ohio State at age 50. He published a short story collection in 2008 called Nakamstiff, followed by the novel The Devil All the Time in 2011, which became a Netflix film with Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. Critics called his work Southern Ohio Gothic. Pollock has said the opening scene, his father taking him to a drive-in at age 7 and beating a man in the parking lot, is drawn from a real memory. The book opens with it, mostly unchanged. About 200 people live in Nakamstiff now. No businesses. The town sign gets stolen or shot often enough that most visitors don't find it on the first try. The name, at least, stayed. Number 8. Gore Orphanage Road near Vermilion. The road that screams. The famous legend is about a fire that killed more than 100 orphan children. It never happened. Gore Orphanage Road in Lorain County takes its name from a surveying error. A gore, a narrow strip of land where a county boundary was miscalculated. The word orphanage was added because a real institution, the Light of Hope Orphanage, sat on that road. Swift Mansion, the ruin everyone treats as the murder site, was built in 1840, never housed orphans, and was later occupied by a family who held seances after 4 of their children died of diphtheria. The actual orphanage was established in 1902 by Reverend Johann Sprunger, who had arrived from Indiana after his previous orphanage burned and closed under allegations of child abuse and neglect. At peak, he housed 120 children, Orphans were documented escaping by wading through the Vermilion River at night to reach town. The orphanage closed in 1916. The mansion burned in 1923. Here's the thing about the screams. Investigators have confirmed they come from truck tires on an Ohio Turnpike bridge 1.25 miles away. The wind carries the sound into the hollow, where it arrives with no visible source. Teenagers have been driving out to hear those screams since at least 1905. Every generation goes, hears something, and drives home to describe what they heard. The real history of that road, a man who fled scandal and ran an institution children escaped from at night, never made it into the legend. The invented version was more dramatic. They always are. Number 7. Milfield. The day the hill swallowed 82 men. At 11:45 in the morning on November 5, 1930, Company President W.E. Titus and 4 of his top executives were underground at Sunday Creek Coal Company Mine No. 6 near Milfield in Athens County, touring new safety equipment. The mine had recently been upgraded. It was considered the safest operation in the Hocking Valley. A fallen trolley wire made contact with the rail. The spark ignited methane gas. The explosion killed 82 men, including Titus and every executive who had descended with him. It remains the worst mining disaster in Ohio history. Milfield had a population of roughly 1,500 that year. The disaster left 59 widows and 154 orphans. At least one mother lost 5 sons. The pool hall, the company store, and a storage room were converted into morgues. 10 hours after the blast, rescue teams found 19 miners alive, 3 miles from the main shaft, having sealed themselves in with burlap, mud, and sticks. The mine reopened a month later. It closed permanently in May 1945. What remains, a 1912 smokestack shedding bricks, partial walls, and a sealed concrete pad over a shaft that collapsed in 2012 and was filled by the state in 2013. The last surviving miner from that day, Sigmund Kozma, died on January 3, 2009. Ohio's historical marker for Milfield is painted black with silver lettering. Every other historical marker in Ohio is brown and gold. The Ohio Historical Society chose black for coal and for the weight of the day. Every other marker in the state tells you where to look. This one tells you what color the grief was. Number 6. Moonville. The ghost town named after the moon. Vinton County in southeastern Ohio is the most densely forested county in the state. Off a converted rail trail near Zaleski, past a parking area about 1.5 miles through the trees, there is a brick arch set into a hillside. Above the arch, carved in stone, Moonville, the town it named, is gone. Moonville came into existence in the 1850s because a farmer named Samuel Coe gave the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad a free right-of-way through his land in exchange for coal transport access. The community, never more than about 100 to 150 people, primarily the Coe and Ferguson families, existed entirely on the railroad's terms. When the coal economics shifted in the early 20th century, families left. The last one moved out in 1947. The rail line was abandoned and tracks pulled up in 1988. The tunnel stayed. By then the tunnel had a body count. A brakeman fell from a moving train in 1859. Engineer Theodore Lawhead died in a head-on collision in the 1880s. An elderly woman known as the Lavender Lady was struck and killed on the tracks. A man named Baldy Keaton was found dead there under circumstances that were never resolved. The ghost story, a lantern-bearing figure seen moving through the tunnel on stormy nights, was published as a credible first-hand account in the Chillicothe the Daily Gazette on January 23, 1895. In 1981, the railroad installed a dedicated signal at Moonville specifically because engineers kept initiating emergency stops at lights spotted inside the tunnel. Workers were officially instructed not to respond to any lantern signal at that location. The state park brochure for Zaleski State Forest describes the trail as said to be haunted around the Moonville Tunnel. That is a state document. It says haunted. If you're enjoying this so far, hit the thumbs up, because we are about to get into the ones that did not just fade. They were deliberate. Number 5. Utopia. the town that drowned its own dreams. The name is on the map. Utopia, Ohio sits on the north bank of the Ohio River in Clermont County, about 25 miles east of Cincinnati on U.S. Route 52. In 1844, a group of followers of French philosopher Charles Fourier established a community here called the Clermont Phalanx. Each family paid $25 per year for a wooden house and a garden. They believed equal sharing of labor and profit would usher in an era of lasting peace. The community lasted 3 years. It dissolved from internal conflict and insufficient capital. Then Josiah Warren, a founder of American individualist anarchism, reorganized the settlement. Labor notes replaced currency. Goods traded at cost plus time worked. That attempt also failed. Then came a group of spiritualists led by John O. Waddles, who took over the property in 1847 and, against the explicit warnings of locales, ordered the community's 30-room brick building moved from its original location to the edge of the Ohio River. The building had been at the water's edge for weeks when the river flooded on December 13, 1847. The walls came down. Most of the people inside died. Waddles survived. He was the one who ordered it moved. The Ohio Bicentennial Commission erected a historical marker at Utopia in 2003. The marker's final line reads, "Thus, the idea of the perfect society, or utopia, died." It is a state government plaque on a state highway, delivering a philosophical verdict on a catastrophe that happened 155 years earlier. A few residents still live here. The river is right there. Number 4. Gnadenhutten. The town built over its own graves. The name is German for Huts of Grace and has been declared by Reader's Digest the most difficult to pronounce place name in Ohio, Gnadenhutten, which is at least something to be known for. Population 1,240. Tuscarawas County. It is the oldest surviving European-founded settlement in Ohio, established in October 1772 by Moravian missionaries and Christian Lenape Indians on the Tuscarawas River. On March 8, 1782, 160 Pennsylvania militiamen under Lieutenant Colonel David Williamson arrived. The community had maintained strict neutrality throughout the Revolutionary War. The British suspected them of aiding the Americans. The Americans suspected them of aiding the British. Both were wrong. The militia accused them of raids that had been carried out by a completely different group. They feigned friendship. They waited for the community to give up its weapons. Then they took a vote. The vote was to execute everyone. It was not unanimous. Some militiamen refused and left. The rest killed 96 men, women, and children with mallets and hatchets in 2 buildings. The community had spent the preceding night in prayer and song, knowing what was coming. At least one boy survived and testified to what had happened. No one was ever prosecuted. The militia leader, David Williamson, died in poverty in 1814. The state of Ohio erected a marker at the town entrance in 2003 calling March 8, 1782, a day of shame. A 37-foot stone monument stands at the Gnadenhutten Historical Park, built in 1872. Below it is a burial mound containing the gathered remains of the 96 people killed. The mound is in a manicured park, next to a reconstructed mission house and a cooper's shop. Children play on the lawn on most days the park is open. The bones are still there. Number 3. Cheshire. The town a power company bought for $20 million. Cheshire, Ohio was founded in 1811 on the Ohio River in Gallia County. By 2000, 221 people lived there. A church, homes along the river, cemeteries set on high ground above the floodplain. The James M. Gavin Power Plant had been operating nearby since 1975. It is the largest coal-fired power plant in Ohio, producing over 11% of the state's electricity. In the early 1990s, AEP installed sulfur dioxide scrubbers at Gavin, intended to reduce emissions. What the scrubbers did instead was redirect concentrated particulates downward into the air over Cheshire rather than upward into the atmosphere. By 2000, residents were reporting sulfur clouds, corroded metal, burning eyes, and respiratory problems. That August, the EPA declared the plant in violation of the Clean Air Act. A study found air quality in Cheshire at 5 times the level needed to trigger an asthma attack. In March 2002, the EPA notified AEP of forthcoming stricter requirements. Within a month, AEP offered to buy out the entire town, every homeowner, at 3.5 times market value, totaling approximately $20 million. The condition: each resident would permanently waive all rights to sue AEP for any past or future harm. Most of the 221 residents accepted. AEP demolished the vacated homes and seeded the lots with grass. Some refused. Here is what that refusal costs. Under the settlement terms, when those holdout residents die, their properties automatically transfer to AEP. Their children cannot inherit. Their grandchildren cannot live there. The plant was sold in 2016 for $2.17 billion as part of a larger deal. The 2020 census counted 123 people in Cheshire. Most who remain are elderly. The town is being absorbed parcel by parcel by a power company. There is no law against it. Number 2. Kirtland, the Prophet's Farm. Kirtland is a small city in Lake County, northeast of Cleveland. Population 6,937. Forested, quiet, good schools, a celebrated arboretum. It was the early headquarters of the Latter-day Saint movement from 1831 to 1837, the site where the first Mormon temple was built. Joseph Smith left in 1838 under warrant for arrest. Some accounts say he cursed the town on his way out. What happened next is documented. Jeffrey Lundgren was excommunicated from the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1988. He moved approximately 20 followers to a rented farmhouse on Chardon Road in Kirtland. He told them the second coming would happen on his birthday at that temple, in that town. He required them to surrender their paychecks. He ran paramilitary weapons training. He planned a violent seizure of the Kirtland Temple. An informant stopped it before it happened. On April 17, 1989, the Avery family, Dennis and Cheryl, and their daughters Trina, 15, Becky, 13, and Karen, 6, were invited to the farm for dinner. A pit had been dug in the barn floor in the days beforehand. The family was led out one by one, bound, gagged, and shot by Lundgren with a .45 caliber pistol. His son and several followers participated or were present. The women in the house said afterward they had stayed inside and tried not to hear. Here's the wild part. The following morning, Kirtland police and FBI agents arrived at the farm, coincidentally over concerns about illegal weapons. They walked through the barn. All 5 members of the Avery family were beneath the floor. The entire cult was still present. Nobody said a word. The agents left. The bodies were not found until January 4, 1990, 9 months later, after a disaffected follower went to police. Lundgren was convicted of 5 counts of aggravated murder and executed by lethal injection on October 24, 2006. His last documented words were, "I cannot say that God was wrong." The barn was demolished in November 2007. A church was built in its place. The Kirtland Temple is open to visitors. Chardon Road looks like every other quiet residential street in a safe Ohio suburb. It is the only address in Kirtland that most people look up. Number 1. Helltown, Boston Township. The End of the World Road. Drive out to where Stanford Road crests in Summit County. The hill drops so sharply there that for a moment you cannot see the road ahead, just sky, then a long plunge into the valley. There are signs that say road closed, but the road continues beyond them. There are no trespassing signs on land that is now a national park. The forest has grown back thick over the ground where the houses stood. The Ohio and Erie Canal towpath runs nearby. The Cuyahoga Valley. Scenic railroad passes through a few times a day. On a gray November morning, none of this feels like a park. It feels like the aftermath of something nobody came back to explain. The town was called Boston. Not Helltown. That name came later, when the story people told about the place had drifted too far from the thing that actually happened. Boston Township in Summit County was established in 1806. It was the oldest village in the county. It grew with the Ohio and Erie Canal in the 1820s, thrived on quarrying for a time, and then continued quietly for another century. Families had lived there for generations. In 1974, President Gerald Ford signed legislation granting the National Park Service authority to purchase land for new national parks. The NPS designated Boston Township as part of the Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area. Residents were required to sell and leave. The government purchased homes faster than it had plans for them. Houses were boarded up with furniture still inside. An old school bus sat in a field. A Presbyterian church stood at the center of the abandoned grid, its tower decorated with upside-down crosses, a standard Gothic architectural element, not a satanic symbol, though the distinction stopped mattering once there was nobody left to explain it. Stanford Road crested that impossible hill and was signed dead end, though you could watch it continue into the distance. For years, the NPS neither developed the land nor cleared it. The site was neither a park nor a ghost town. It was a bureaucratic gap in the middle of a county that looked from the outside like the aftermath of something unspeakable. So the legends moved in. A toxic chemical spill. A 30-foot mutant python loose in the woods. A serial killer haunting an abandoned school bus. Satanic rituals in the church. None of it happened. The python story existed because people needed an explanation for why a government would force families out of their homes and seal off the roads. The real explanation, an environmental preservation bill interpreted broadly, executed faster than planned, followed by a generation of bureaucratic inaction, was too mundane and too painful to carry the weight of what had happened to those families. Before he left, at least one displaced resident wrote on the wall of his house, "Now we know how the Indians felt." The last structures were demolished in 2016. The area is Cuyahoga Valley National Park now. Boston Cemetery remains and can be visited. The canal towpath is maintained. The legends survive in forums and documentary videos, without physical evidence, without a body, without a place to point to anymore. What the residents actually left behind before the walls came down was the true story. That the government made a decision. The decision had a cost, and the cost was paid by people who had no vote in it. They couldn't say that clearly, so they invented a snake. Ohio doesn't advertise these places. They live in the margins, in towns that got smaller, decisions made far away that landed close to home, costs paid by people who had no say. My entry is Utopia, a state highway marker announcing that the idea of a perfect society died on a roadside in Claremont County between a guardrail and the river. Because it did, and someone felt the need to say so officially. Which of these surprised you most? Leave it in the comments. Subscribe for more from the corners of the map.